It's not. I didn't find anything.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. It's the regular assembly meeting on January 21st, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Randy. Here. Mark.
Here.
Kelsey. Here. Bob.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Taylor.
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly this evening with Member Tremblay calling in and, from Juneau. Thanks for making the trip up there to be involved in that ferry discussion. So it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to item 3 on this evening's agenda, and that is approval of minutes. And the only minutes we need to approve are from the January 6th meeting of 2020. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Burrell. If there's no changes, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item 4, amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. Member Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Chandra's here, and she sent us something this afternoon, and I'm kind of hoping that we can put in a pool report under report of other officers on item 11A.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And like Member Mucci suggested, we'll put Chandler on A, and then we'll move Mr. Hofstetter to this B. So Chandler has to be back to this Parks and Rec, I believe. So, Member Lynn, did you want to?
Yeah, another one?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, yes, I would like to add an item under discussion related to the manager's goals and objectives that we gave him earlier, and have a discussion on it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? Member Mucci.
Sure. I'm just looking for some more clarification on where you want to see this on the agenda
I would
and the
like to
topics
see-
that we're talking about.
I'd like to see it under discussion items, and what I'd like to do is to talk about a couple of the items of which he's fed back to us, and where we might want to go with those items, and whether or not we need to have a work session related to them.
Sounds good.
Okay, so remind us, Debbie, can you add that under discussion of Member Stanton Gregor?
Yeah, you'd feel comfortable having that here while the manager is absent? You don't want to wait on it? I'm fine having it, of course. I just wanted to see what you were looking for.
I've already had the discussion with the manager.
Cool, thanks.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're looking to have a few topics that we could get to the city manager between now and the next meeting.
Well, I was looking more at if everybody had a chance to look at setting up a work session.
Okay.
We might do, because he's fed back to us at least 3 items that I'm aware of, that he's asked for feedback, and we've not had any discussions or any feedback to him. And then there's 3 or 4 other items we've given him that I think need some clarification.
Sounds like a good place to put it under discussion. If everybody's in favor of adding that to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then will you prompt my memory, Clerk Thompson, when we get there? Got a little bit of a cold, and I'm not totally with it this evening, so.
No problem. Can we approve the agenda as amended if that's all the amendment?
We need to, as if there's no other amendments. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like a brief update on where we are with the police sergeant's hiring process.
Okay, maybe,
I mean, it doesn't have to happen now, but I just wanted it on the agenda just to get a...
would it be good with the assembly to add that, Chief Kerr's here, add that under report of other officers? Yep. Okay, we'll go ahead and make that item C. Thank you for being here tonight, Chief Kerr. So everybody's in favor of adding that to the agenda then? Okay.
Yes.
So, if there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Burrell. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we move forward with the amended agenda. Okay, that brings us to public hearings. There are none this evening. Bid awards, there's none under that item as well. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to items on today's agenda? Okay, please come forward, state your name and who you represent, please. And there's a 5-minute limit, please. Adhere to that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. My name is Candy Woodworth, and I reside at 848 South Mitkoff Highway, and I speak for myself. I would like to speak on discussion item 17A, inasmuch as the state assessor has indicated information on the property tax issues of Frederick Point East and Article 14 will be considered in the development of the audit. Municipal property tax ordinances should maintain conformity to state statutes. Looking at the Alaska State Statutes, Section 29.45.010 on municipal property taxes, it states, quote, "A borough may levy an area-wide property tax for area-wide functions." Those functions are equal to what we know as services. A non-area-wide property tax for functions limited to the area outside cities. Petersburg Borough eliminated the city of Petersburg. A property tax in a service area for functions limited to the service area, unquote. What a service area is defined as is found under Section 29.35.450. Quote, "A service area to provide special services in a borough may be established by ordinance. Special services include services not provided by a borough on an area-wide or non-area-wide basis, or a higher or different level of services than that provided on an area-wide or non-area-wide basis," unquote. The Assembly may levy or authorize the levying of taxes in a service area to finance the special services. So to recap, there are 3 property tax designations: the area-wide, that is understood for Petersburg to be education at 4.33 mils, the service areas set up for special services that the borough does not provide, and a non-area-wide for services that the borough does provide. Recalling that these services do not include the enterprise fund activities, which I spoke at length on January the 6th. Comparing the borough charter, we find that the service area is inclusive of all services, including enterprise fund activities, provided by the borough within the former City of Petersburg city limits. Borough services are required to be provided only through so-called service areas. Therefore, the non-area-wide designation, for all intents and purposes, is non-existent. The original intent of the state statute defining service areas is found to be changed by deletion of the words special and non-area-wide basis in the borough's definition. The indebtedness of the so-called service area has been made to fall into the category of general obligation for past voter-approved bonds and the present collection of a general tax for municipal purposes. In closing, so the area-wide, non-area-wide, and service areas have been defined for us in Section 29 of the state statutes. The same section continues and emphatically states, quote, "If a tax is levied on real property, the tax must be assessed and levied and collected as provided in this chapter," unquote. So then it seems that there is really only one word that the state assessor needs to define for Petersburg. That one word is must. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next item, item 8. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak this evening on items unrelated to the agenda? Please state your name and who you represent.
Yes.
Thank you. Just for the record, we all know who you are.
Yeah. Dave Kensinger, Lot 1, Keene Channel, and I'm representing myself. I applaud you in your efforts to work with AML to try and get more funding for the Alaska Marine Highway System. Somebody that's lobbied for over 23 years for money for the system, I know it's a hard thing to do, but I want to caution you guys on a couple of things. One, just because you get additional funds authorized for the system does not necessarily mean they'll spend it in a way that you want them to spend it, like i.e. service to Cordova or to Angoon. And the other thing I want to caution you is that at the start of the session last year, we had 43 votes to override the governor's vetoes, and at the end of the session, we still have 43 votes. In the entire session, after repeated attempts of the other 17 members of the Senate and the House, we were unable to get an additional 2 more members. So people are pretty much set in how they're approaching the funding issues right now. Right last year, the Marine Highway System faced an existential threat to the system, with the governor originally proposing to more or less eliminate the system. Fortunately, Senator Stedman was able to do a compromise. The problem is the system is basically on life support. So what I'd encourage you on your trips to Juneau this year lobbying, that you take a close look at what's called the Alaska Marine Highway Reform Project. This is a project that started over 2 years ago by Southeast Conference, which this borough is a member of. And it was really unique because it was one of the few studies that the DOT put money in the pot, and many of the communities in the region that depend upon the ferry system put money in the pot for the study. Some communities like Ketchikan and Juneau put in excess of $30,000 each. So there was a lot of skin in the game from our sister communities in the region. And basically what the study said was that if we do not change the management structure of the system, it really doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, you're still going to have a mess. So I guess in closing, what I encourage you to do is to look at that. Yes, the system needs money, but if we don't do something to change the underlying basis of how the system is operated, guess what? I'll be back here next year talking about the same thing. And guess what? We all better buy a kayak.
Thank you, Dave, for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on topics not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, brings us to the next item on the agenda, Board, Commission, and Committee reports. There are none listed this evening. No items on the consent agenda. That brings us to report of other officers, and we've rearranged it a little bit, added 2 speakers to that, and I would like Chandra Thornburg to come up first, and then we'll have Phil Hofstetter come up, PMC CEO.
Thank you guys for the time this evening. So, as everyone knows, the pool is down and out. We have 3 main issues that we need to address before opening the pool again: the HVAC system, the pool leak, and the heat exchangers. Sam Jackson, Justin Haley, Chris Cotta, Colin Perry, Cody, and Steph, and multiple others have been working on this, as well as Fleet Refrigeration and Brian Haley. So I have to send out a huge thank you to everybody involved in trying to get us up and running as fast as possible. We've been working with Fleet on the HVAC system. I came in last week and helped fix the majority of the leaks. When the system was turned back on Friday, we still had 4 or 5 more leaks in HVAC system 1, which is the pool system, which controls all of the humidity and temperature on the pool deck. We've been working at trying to rectify those. Fleet will be in tomorrow morning to work on those, and our goal is to try and get that system up and running tomorrow. HVAC 2, we were able to get that up and running this afternoon. The pool deck, it controls a really small portion of the pool deck, the lobby and the lobby area and the mezzanine. Not the mezzanine, I apologize, in the lobby area. That portion is up and running this evening. It's working well. It's looking like the air quality is already improving. So that's good news. So thank you to Sam and Fleet for helping the HVAC 2 system get up and running. There's 4 coils in both HVAC systems. During the freeze, 3 of the coils broke. 2 of the coils had major breakages in them. And what we're trying to do right now is fix them to a point where we can get up and running temporarily, but we're going to need to replace both of those coils. They have a 2-month manufacturing window because they make them when you order them, and each coil costs approximately $8,000. So we're trying to make sure that we can get as much done and fixed and see how long we can last on our fixes before we spend that money and order those. The lap pool leak, we've been diagnosing multiple different situations and ideas. We also called Evaqua Water Technologies last week to give us a list of things that we would like to work through. They gave us multiple different things. I'm going to try and walk through the big topic items that we went through and verified already. The water is not leaking past our backwash system, so we were able to isolate the valves and make sure that the waste circulation is good to go. We did this by adjusting valves and working with the autofill controls. It was determined that the leaks were not through those. We inspected the hydrostatic relief valve. That's a valve at the bottom of the pool. That could have had a leak in it. We dove down, tested the leak on that. The valve is in place. We completed a static test to determine the loss rate. So we turned off the pool on Friday. It stayed off. Over the weekend, we lost approximately 22 inches of water. So it was determined that the water is being lost from inside the pool at this moment in time. So the next step that we're working on, that we've been working on with Justin today, is emptying out the pool and getting it down past the lights. We're wondering if there might be a leak in the conduit line or the electrical for the underwater light system. We're going to be emptying the pool out this evening. I mean, we're still working on it right now. And determining if we lose any more water after we get it below the light line. Tomorrow morning, if the water's lower, then Justin, Sam, and I are meeting up to try and figure out what we can do next. If we haven't lost any more water by tomorrow morning, then we'll notice the lights. We've run a dye test on all of the returns for the piping and fitting systems to see if there's a leak that way. There was no clear outcomes to be able to determine if there was a leak. We inspected the surge tank for a visual inspection and a dye test on that. And we use plugs to plug up our pipes at the bottom of the pool to determine where the leaks were coming from. All of those, unfortunately, didn't lead to finding any breakage in any of our piping, which is good. It just leaves more question marks in the air. Justin Haley and his crew have been working with us extensively throughout last week and this week. They brought in their underwater video camera inspection. They've run it through our piping systems. They've been able to find that the water's coming out into our, what's the word? I keep forgetting it. It's the water collection tank, the drain. It's about 6 feet away from the farthest wall. So the leak is coming from somewhere really close to the exterior of the building, which is also something that's making us believe that it might be the lights, that there might be water coming through the conduit in the lighting system. The lap pool, I went over that one, I apologize. So lap pool is turned off. If it is the lights, We will need to procure material to stop the leak. It'll need to at least cure for 48 hours. Once cured and refilled, the pool will take approximately 7 to 10 days. So at the earliest, we're looking at next Saturday to reopen the facility at nice temp. Yeah. So the heat exchangers are our third and final element. They're kind of in an unknown condition at this state. Those were determined. We kind of opened them up. They've got a slow leak to them, like a drop every minute or so. We suspected that they might be a problem with heating because we've been seeing an increasing electricity cost, so we wanted to make sure that those were maximized. We've called in Brian Haley. I've also called Ketchikan Mechanical. They're going to be coming in next Monday to help further assess the situation. The outside, we're hoping that it's just the outside that we need to replace a gasket and it will be good to go. Each gasket is approximately $50. The head plate, we decided to go ahead and replace that. That's $750. So we've got those on their way and coming up, but we need to find out more through Ketchikan Mechanical before we can go any further on that. So that is all I have for you guys.
Any questions of Chandra? Best case scenario is 2 weeks, probably, for the pool to be up?
For the pool, Saturday, like next Saturday, 10 days.
Coming with the following. Any other questions? Sorry.
I'm just curious what you guys normally do for preventative maintenance in these kind of cold snaps to prevent these things from happening.
So the HVAC system, So the HVAC system is turned on for 24 hours, like no stopping or downtime. Last year we brought in the HVAC technicians that run our computer system and our sensors. We replaced multiple sensors on the unit. We've replaced multiple motors on the units. So we continuously look at them. Cody did go through the HVAC system in November and replaced all of the filters. He oiled all of the joints. He made sure it was working well. I know he's done more. I can get you a larger report if you'd like.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, this is a great report. I'm sure you probably understand that we hear a lot about the pool. The kids are in it, or in and out of it all the time. So have the coils, have they been ordered for the HVAC system?
No.
Okay. Is that something you anticipate doing, or?
We're going to need to order at least one.
Okay.
One of the coils has over 15 breaks in it. We have to do that. I wanted to let the system run, see how it's impacting and taking it on. The last time we fixed a coil, we were able to work with it for 5 or 6 years before having to replace it. So I'm really hoping that 2 of the coils won't need to be replaced to save money but yeah.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I don't know much about the pools, but I would think I would order a couple of those coils to kind of keep things going.
Okay.
The other question I had is, like, when you empty part of the pool, does it take away from the integrity of the pool for pressure that's supposed to be in the pool? And if you take the water out of it, does it diminish the integrity of the pool?
So one of the reasons why, the surrounding ground temperature is freezing. One of the reasons why we chose to empty the pool as a last resort was because as the pressure in the pool diminishes, the surrounding pressure increases, and during the winter time when everything's frozen, there's worst case scenarios where it can lift the shell up out of the water or out of the pool without water in it. Our goal is we still are going to keep roughly 20,000 gallons of water in the pool. The pool holds 200,000 gallons. So we want to keep that pressure in there during the winter months, especially because it is so frozen solid. And the hydrostatic relief valve that I kind of mentioned earlier, during the summer, that's the kind of the pressure release valve. So when everything's thawed out, it works really, has a chance to work really well. But during the winter time, when everything's frozen, it doesn't. We don't know what's frozen underneath the ground with the pipings that go to the hydrostatic relief valve. So it's, yeah.
Member Mucci or Member Burrell, you had a question?
Yeah, what makes you guys think that it's the electrical conduit that's draining? Is there the light shorted, or is there, I mean, what's?
There's one light in particular that did short out, but there was a collapse when we went to go replace that light back in June. There was a collapsed conduit tunnel, and that one was the hardest to get through. It was honestly last on our list at this point, and it's a lot of water to go through that small of a conduit, so I'm not sure.
Member Mucci, you had another question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My last one is, can you walk around the edge of the pool, the bottom part of the pool? Or is it just in the ground and there's no way to see what's going on in the pool?
The pool is completely surrounded in concrete. So the piping structure underneath the pool is in the middle of, yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
So just one question, and you might not have the answer. You say you lost 22 inches of water in, was it 24 hours?
Over the span of Friday to Monday.
Oh, so 3 days. So I just wonder how many gallons that was. It sounds like a pretty significant leak, 22 inches of...
It's
You don't, I mean...
we estimated that, sorry, you've got, I know she remembers this off the top of her head.
For every 3 inches, it's 7,000 gallons.
Substantial leak.
Through an electrical conduit.
Is there any other questions of Chandler? Thank you for your, Member Mucci.
So just one more thing. I mean, is there anywhere up at where the pool is that there's water flowing somewhere?
So that's one of the things is that we haven't seen any water flowing. It's going to our collection drain. Okay. So we, after doing all of these different processes, we were able to find that last Wednesday, find that the water was coming out through there, and that's what led Justin to put the video cameras down the collection drain and up through it to see where the water's coming in at.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your report. And
Yeah, thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Hofstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Phil Hofstetter, CEO, Petersburg Medical Center. A couple of items. We also were very, we were on thin ice, so to speak, with the cold. In the last couple of weeks, we had our facilities. I want to thank Mike Boggs for really stepping up. He was on top of our HVAC system as well, which was also an issue with the cold. So we were very fortunate not to have any catastrophic failure points, but it was pretty significant. Second thing is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at Sons of Norway is our town hall meeting, and that is we're requesting the community feedback. So please participate if you're listening and you want to have questions about the new facility, master planning. That is the time to do it. So we have NAC, which is our architectural firm, coming up, and they'll provide a presentation similar to the one that you saw. The addition is they do have cost estimates attached to this one. It's going to be very interesting. So it'll be great to have that feedback and decide on next steps. So, and the third thing is our audit. So our final audit came out annually. We're required to have an audit, and I do want to identify, I did report out on this last time, and it's something we've been addressing in the past year, but there are some findings we want to make sure that you're aware of related to our accounts receivable and in some of our billing and collections. In that audit, we switched firms this year. So one of the areas our team has been addressing in the past year is some of these issues and identifying some of those issues. And we hired a consultant to come in, and we also switched to auditing firm that really understands healthcare finance. And so we dug really deep. We did a very thorough forensic analysis, for a lack of a better word, on our financials in our report. I think you have a copy, or you were seeing a copy of it, and a number of findings related to that. So I want you to make you aware of those. I am not going to go into a lot of detail on those. If you would like detail related to the audit, please come to the board meeting on Thursday evening at 5 p.m. Our auditor is coming up in person to present to our board at that time. One thing of note is identified in the audit is our third-party vendor, and we are working very aggressively with this vendor to come improve some of those irregularities that are in that report.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I
Any
have.
questions of Phil? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Phil. Is it possible to get like the rough scenario of the audit report, the concerns that the auditor had? I mean, just if there's 5 or 6 or 7 items that we could kind of look at and spend some time with. I don't know how that all works, but
Yeah,
that would
well,
be helpful.
So the high-level overview is the algorithm or the calculation of our accounts receivable. So on the financial, on the books, the way that you look at your financial accounting, and really it's an accounting principle. It's called accounts receivable, and the way that's been calculated in the past has not been very accurate. And so we had to hire a consultant to come in to really look at the accounts receivable and to understand what the appropriate AR is on our monthly statements. And then in addition to that, and that's important because, I mean, from a cash standpoint, it doesn't change anything, Cash is cash. But the way the books look, we had to reopen 2018 as a result of that. And make an accurate reflection of that. So that was something that we did. And again, these are all things that are reported out on at our board meetings for the past year. And we've been fixing and improving. So the audit is nothing. It is accurate. It is exactly what I expected. It is something that we identified ahead of time, and our team has identified ahead of time as well. So, but billing and collections is another area. We have a firm. And that we work with, and we are working very, very aggressively with resolving some of those areas. But again, there's a lot of areas that have been improving over the years, if you look historically. So this is sort of like a stepping up the game and improving some of the efficiencies.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Member Lynn?
Yes, if I can help, Phil, the audit report was sent to the Assembly. It'd be worth your while to read the cover letter that went with the audit. I think there's, 4 or 5 pages in there.
It's about 7 pages, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that really kind of sums up, I think, what Phil's trying to address in there.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, it's excellent, and I really want to. I mean, my team's here because they're interested, but I want to really commend them because they're the ones who really brought it to my attention, and we're really making a lot of progress in this area. So, and they were working really hard on it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Hofstadter? Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, for your report. Chief Kerr, could you just use the microphone there if it works, and then update us on the sergeant recruitment?
So, we have not received any outside applications for it. I think we have not received any outside applicants for it. We have 3 internal officers that would like to test for sergeant. If you're asking me why that is, I'm sure someone will, so I'll just answer it right now. Currently, the borough pays $27.36 an hour starting out for a sergeant. With 1 year employment, sergeant would make $30.40. So we're having to compete with other places around. Cordova just raised their standard officer starting anywhere from $30 to $35 an hour. Juneau PD, I know they're bigger, but just so you guys understand why we're probably not getting applicants, is their first-year officers are making $33.74, and my officers, so I mean, you figure a sergeant who's going to leave an officer position to come down here to be sergeant for $3 less an hour, but if you take my guys that applied for it, they're anywhere from $34.93 all the way up to over $38.71 is what they would be getting paid as an officer in Juneau. And we're offering $27.36 to $30.40. So I think that has a huge impact on it. So basically, we'll probably end up having to train the new sergeant, and then I have a field training course for sergeants that we're going to put them through, and we're moving forward with that process. The guys were just asking me today, Officer Pop just got back from vacation, so we're going to move forward tomorrow with the testing process. So that's where we're at with it.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're talking about one of your existing officers being trained to be a sergeant?
Yes, that's the only way we're going to be able to do something. And that's stuff we can do in-house, and we'd have to send them to a police supervisor course, which is normally in the wintertime or something like that. And so we'd have to do something like for that to fill it. I mean, I do have people interested in officer positions. I did have one chief call me, but he wanted to work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, wanted to come work for me. And it wouldn't work out. I told him Petersburg is too nice of a place to offer that. He was calling me from Fort Yukon, I believe it was. So.
Okay, sounds like a tough situation. Any other questions of the chief? Okay, that is all for a report of other officers. That brings us to the mayor's report, which is fairly short. We're seeking letters of interest. The Assembly is seeking letters of interest from borough residents to serve on the Public Safety Advisory Board until the October 2020 municipal election. Letters of interest may be mailed to Clerk Thompson at P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska 99833, or emailed to dthompson@petersburgak.gov, or drop by the borough office at 12 South Nordic Drive. For more information, contact Clerk Thompson at 772-5405. I'd like to wish sincere condolences from the Petersburg Borough to the family and friends of Lou Williams III, who passed away January 4th, 2020. Mr. Williams was co-owner of the Ketchikan Daily News and served on the Ketchikan City Council for 32 years, 3 terms as mayor. He also served on the SEPA board for many years. Mr. Williams was a dedicated public servant who cared strongly for his community and Southeast Alaska. He will be missed. And a little side note, when he was living here, when I was about 10 years old, I worked for his dad at the Petersburg Press when the press was down on Singley Alley, so I knew him back then. Alaska Municipal League Winter Legislative Conference. Mayor Jensen and Assemblymember Lynn will be traveling to Juneau for the AML Legislative Conference to be held on February 18th to 20th, and I guess we could discuss meeting dates, the first meeting in February, to see if we're going to be short people. Southeast Conference, Mid-Session Summit. Southeast Conference will hold its Mid-Session Summit in Juneau, February 4th through the 5th. The Assembly approved travel to the conference for one member in this year's budget. Mayor Jensen and Assembly Member Mucci are the Assembly's representatives to the Southeast Conference. So at some point, I guess this is the only meeting we have before that to figure it out, what we're going to do. Member Mucci, are you interested in attending that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we still talking about a Washington, D.C. trip on February?
That's on the agenda later on in the agenda.
Sure, I'm interested in going to the Southeast Conference mid-session summit.
Since we only have funding for one person, I'm busy, I could miss that and then go to the AML one, and then we'll discuss the
Sure.
DC trip when it comes up on the agenda. So that's it for the mayor's report. The manager called in sick
I
today.
do have a question, though.
Yes, Member Michi.
Thank you. What does the Public Safety Advisory Board do? What's the purpose of that group?
I think they just work with setting policy and work with the police department, don't they? Clerk Thompson, maybe you could clarify.
Yeah, there is it's in code, and it says exactly what their job is, but they are to take public concerns, probably, and discuss them, and then probably work with the fire department and the police department for the public safety concerns, trying to make things safer. They're advisory, so.
Just like many of our other advisory boards that we voted to disband when we formed the borough, but I'm not saying that that one shouldn't be there.
Okay.
How many person board is that? Is it 5?
It's a 5-member board,
And we're short one.
correct.
Okay.
We have no chair at this point.
Are you putting your hand in?
No.
No, Member Michi.
No, I'm not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just trying to, I want to get some sense about what it's all about, and I'm hoping the chief can kind of tell me if this is an important board to him. We've had some frustration with some board members in the past, and, I know everybody's pretty darn busy, but, is this a helpful board for the chief of police? Mr. Mayor.
honestly.
Can you answer that, Chief Kerr, if you want to? Do you get any input from the board?
Oh, we get lots of input.
Oh, okay.
When we have meetings, it's important to some people, I'm sure.
Okay, I wouldn't expect you to have to answer.
I mean, I believe they think that they're doing a good deed, and people do talk to them for their input, or people do come to them and bring issues to them, and they bring it up to us.
So I guess they could be considered a liaison group from the public to the PD and the...
Yeah, that'll work.
Member Michi? Sorry.
So what I'm just trying to sort out, Mr. Mayor, is, so if a community member has a concern about traffic fines or four-wheeler riding, do they come directly to the police department, or do they go to the Public Safety Advisory Board and then bring that forward to you? And do you use that Public Safety Advisory Board as a sounding board for things that you'd like to see done differently around town?
We use them for the speed limit reduction, extending the school zone on Wrangell Avenue. When you ask who people go to, they pretty much go to whoever will listen. And I mean, people bring stuff up to us, bring stuff up to them. I mean, I don't know. People bring stuff to you guys when they tell us the same stuff sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We'll move on. The manager called in sick today. There's a manager's report. If anybody has any specific questions of the manager, I imagine you can email him and get his opinion on it. And if everybody's okay with that, it'll be on the record, his report. So brings us to unfinished business, item 14. There's ordinances for two of them for third and final reading. The first one is ordinance 2019-16. This is an ordinance amending the official zoning map for Service Area 1 of the Petersburg Borough to rezone a portion of Lot 1 of Section 9 and Lot 9 of Section 4, Copper River Meridian, Petersburg Recording District, parcel 01-057-100, and this is located at 112 Scalbay Loop Road, and it's going to be zoned, the proposal is on this third reading, from industrial to commercial 2, C2. So I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its third reading.
So
Second.
Motion made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Marole. Is there any discussion on this? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2019-16 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. The next ordinance for third and final reading this evening is 2019-17. This is an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code 1.16.030 to add language to the Borough Traffic Code's fine schedule as required by state statute. I'd entertain a motion to approve this in its third reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Morrow. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the ordinance 2019-17 passed in its third and final reading. This brings us to new business. And tonight, there's one ordinance under new business. It's 2020-01. This is an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 14.30, titled Mountain View Manor Elderly Housing and Assisted Living Facility, to increase assisted living rental and service rates and to add a new level 4 of the assisted living care. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this in its first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. Discussion. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a few of these items are some of the ideas that the group that we had kind of look at the Mountain View Manor and kind of give us some suggestions about making things a little bit more cost effective up there. I think the level 4 care is something that we don't have at this point. I think it would be good to hear from Mountain Manor folks and just kind of hear their thoughts on this as well. I'd love to hear what Sheila has to say.
So, Sheila, this is going to be, if it passes, this is going to be implemented over a multiple year time frame?
Yeah, and it's something that's actually already happening. We're already providing that care, we're just not charging for it.
The Tier 4 level.
Correct.
And so, with that being said, we have the staff on hand. This wouldn't require more personnel?
No.
Okay, it's just to get us more in line with what other facilities charge
Yes,
around
and
the
to be-
state?
Yeah, to be charging for people who require total care. We're doing everything for them. They're basically not participating, and that's things that we've been doing and have not charged because we didn't have that level.
Okay,
It's a logical step.
so if these raises were implemented over the proposed timeline, would that offset the $150,000 that we've been getting from the general fund or wherever it's coming from? Or
Everything is pretty variable because you have some that are private pay, some that are Medicaid. So I just kind of did a rough estimate, and it would be about $55,000 a year extra. Could be more than that for sure, depending on how people progress or whatever happens. Could be less, but definitely about $55,000.
close the deficit by a third,
Yeah.
roughly? Member Stan Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is also for Sheila Lynn, but more of a clarifier for the public. This is at present using existing staff, just billing for services you're providing already, using the existing staff.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Member Bucci, I'm sorry, did you get your...
I'm all good.
Okay. Member Lynn?
I had a question that I sent to both Jody and Sheila related to 1430.040, and that had to do with the Borough Assembly by resolution may refund or rebate any user charges, any user fees or charges collected for services in any manner deemed appropriate. My question is should that be the Borough Assembly, or should that really not be within the authority, the finance director and Sheila Lynn's authority to provide rebates and that type of thing as needed?
I'll try. We're already doing that. I mean, if somebody leaves an apartment, and we prorate it to pay them back the rent that they're due, after giving their notice. I mean, we're already reimbursing them for things like that. And I don't know if that's what you're addressing, but we're already doing that.
And I believe you're talking about 050, you said 040. but
No, you're
actually
correct.
The last
Last one.
paragraph. I read this paragraph more to talk about maybe a grant or something, which I do believe should go to the assembly to decide on what to do with it. But it does say refunds or rebates, so, but however you want to deal with it is fine with us.
So what was your, do you have a specific issue with that, Member Lynn, or
well,
just?
The way I see it is that when we're talking about rebates and the types of things that Sheila's talking about, she's already doing it, but by this, it's the Borough Assembly. And I would really suggest that, you know, by the next, we pass it maybe, and by the next reading, we ask for that to be revised so that it gives her the authority rather than have it come to us and those types of things.
Amend that section and
Yes.
give it to the department head, that discretion?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't want to make that motion now? Would you rather wait till the second reading and public hearing? Member Bucci?
Yeah, I'd like to, since we're talking about it, we might as well amend this thing in its first reading so that we can get it out there, because the next reading will be public hearing, and
Good point. And so I would like to amend it. I'm not quite sure what the best wording would be here. Jody or Sheila, do you have an idea how that should be worded?
I have one question, if you can interject it, and maybe ask the clerk. So do you think this is something the attorney should
Yes,
look
I
at
do.
and maybe get the proper wording before the next meeting? Does that
Yes, I
make-
do. That's exactly what I was going to suggest.
Okay, so with that being said, I guess there never was a formal motion to amend it. We were just discussing it, so should we ask the clerk or Sheila to have the attorney look at it and give us suggested language to?
And if, I just want to reiterate what I think you're saying is, you think that Sheila or I should be able to refund or rebate user fees, but maybe other things other than user fees, such as grants or other windfalls, would still come to the assembly?
Yes.
Maybe, okay.
Okay, so.
Makes sense.
Okay, do you have a comment, Clerk Thompson?
I just have a suggestion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, maybe Brandy should go first.
Did you have your hand up? Sorry, Brandy.
I was just thinking, how I read it is that it just basically gives the assembly that power if for some reason Sheila has a problem with a specific person, that they have the authority, that we have the authority, if they bring it to us, to override anything that she, you know, if there's a refund or rebate. It just gives an extra level of protection to the people up there. That's how I read it. But, you know, maybe we need to have more clarification, because that's like 3 different interpretations.
So your suggestion was?
My suggestion was just going to be to actually make a motion to amend this section so that the department head and finance director have the authority to issue refunds for user fees and charges for services, but anything else comes back to the assembly. If you make that a motion and ask that I have the attorney do the wording, then I can have it done and ready for the second reading.
Instead of taking that step at the second reading?
Yes.
Okay,
I would make that
like to
motion.
make that
so-
motion?
Yeah.
I would second that motion.
Motion's been made, like the clerk stated, by Member Lynn and seconded by Member Stanton Greger. So any discussion on the proposed amendment?
Makes sense.
Okay, clerk call a roll on the amendment.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. We're not really as confused as it may sound to the listening public. So is there any discussion on the main motion as amended? Clerk call a roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2021 passes unanimously as amended, and the next reading of that ordinance will be the first meeting in February, which I believe is on the 3rd. And so It passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2021 budget policies, and Finance Director Tal would like to present her budget policies for the upcoming budget cycle. If there's any questions, I guess, if everybody's okay with it.
Maybe I'll just go through a few changes. Item A, the current general fund 4 to 6 month target range for budget is 6 months, which is $4.3 million. It's, if you remember correctly, our policy is between 4 and 6 months of operating expenses. We're right at the top of that. It's a good place to be. If you go down to item C, I've changed this from last year. Last year it said any surplus that the general fund has, 50% of it would be going into the property development fund. I'd like to just keep all of it into the general fund for right now until we get through this next budget cycle in case we need it to offset any increases in expenses or decreases in state funding that we're not aware of to help the tax rate, get it down a little bit. So that was basically the only 2 items that I've changed significantly. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Member Lynn.
Is your thinking then, Jody, that at that point then you'll make a recommendation of what should go into the property fund?
Yes, absolutely.
Any
And
other
we might
questions?
want to just keep it into the general fund for a few years, why I don't see this issue going away, but maybe the assembly will choose to move some of it to the property development fund. It's all up to you guys.
Okay, and hopefully we're pleasantly surprised with the budget from the legislature this year, but we'll see if there's no more school bond indebtedness and so forth. Any other questions about the budget policies presented by the Finance Director? Member Stanton Gregor?
Not really a question, more of a parliamentary one. Do we need to make a motion to approve it?
Yeah, probably should.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morol to approve the presented budget policies from the Finance Director. We've already discussed it. Maybe we should have made a motion first, but all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item, C, letter to the National Marine Fisheries Service regarding the humpback whale critical habitat proposed rule. I'd entertain a motion to approve sending this draft letter to National Marine Fisheries Service.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Michi. Is there any discussion on this? Sounds like the meeting was well attended. I've listened to part of the minutes, but I was not in town, so sounds like the outcome of the meeting was overwhelming to exempt Southeast is kind of the gist I'm getting. So, Member Michi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wasn't just Southeast, but it was most of the state of Alaska, and the West Coast. I mean, the news media said there were 60 people, but I counted at least 100 in this room, and there were people outside the door, there were people back there, and the lady from National Marine Fisheries said she was amazed at the turnout. We had people from Wrangell, Ketchikan, just all over, and it was a good turnout, and I didn't hear anybody in the room say they wanted more protections for humpback whales. I mean, I think we heard from a wide variety of people who've been in this area for generations, and they just see all kinds of stuff and whales, but they, you couldn't quantify the number of whales. But I mean, what's important to me is that if you put another layer of restrictions on things, it doesn't get any better. I mean, right now we're dealing with Marine Mammal Protection Acts for sea otters that are impacting the local fishing fleet, and I think people have a justifiable concern that if we're talking about humpback whales, it's not going to make life any easier. I think the room full of people here kind of expressed those thoughts as well. Thank you.
Hopefully National Marine Fisheries Service listens. So. Member Lynn?
Yep, I would concur with what Member Mucci said. I counted 80 in the room and about 30 or 40 going in and out. But I thought there was a couple of really good presentations out of that. It was Alaska Sailors Association, I thought did an excellent presentation there at that session. And then a couple of our fishermen, I thought, asked were really valid questions that I don't think were ever going to be followed up on after that, particularly the folks that have 40, 50 years of fishing history here, talking about past and then bringing it to the present. I don't think those ever got captured well enough, in my opinion.
Okay, and just a reminder for the people listening, you have until the 31st of the month, I believe, to send in your testimony or to testify on this issue. So, if there's no other comments, will the clerk call the roll?
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously, and that will be sent off as our borough's position. Next item, it's a special use permit for Greg and Wendy Einerson. I'd entertain a motion to approve the special use permit.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Marole. Is there any discussion? Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for putting the time and diligence and bringing this before this. I'll definitely be voting yes.
Okay, and I just wanted to, like Member Stanton Greger just mentioned, that Planning and Zoning went over it and they approved it and recommended it. So, is there any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, the special use request for Greg and Wendy Einerson passes. Next item on the agenda is appointment of borough spokesperson and negotiating team members for the upcoming union negotiations. I'd entertain a motion to approve this recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Marole. Is there any discussion? Just a little preview of this for the people listening. Manager Giesbrecht requests the Assembly formally appoint the borough's negotiating team and spokesperson for the upcoming union negotiations with the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association. Manager Giesbrecht recommends he be appointed as spokesperson and Clerk Thompson and Finance Director Tao be appointed as negotiating team members, and requests the Assembly grant him the authority to add team members to the group if necessary. And that's the little rundown on it. Member Stanton Greger?
Yeah, I would like to amend this to add Carl Hagerman as well, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Greger, seconded by Member Norheim, I believe, to add Carl Hagerman as a negotiating team member. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you. Just to explain my thinking, Director Hagerman had expressed some interest in joining the negotiation team, and I think he brings a very useful perspective, having both been a union employee at one point and also being on the side of the admin side of things. Basically, his years of history in both sides of that could be very useful.
Any other discussion? This is on the amendment to add Mr. Hagerman's name.
Actually, can I add one thing to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
And just for those listening at home, the manager had, Carl, the manager, had been talking, and the manager, and correct me if I'm wrong, Clerk Thompson, feels good about having Carl on the team if the Assembly so desires.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And you feel comfortable with that number of 4?
Yes. Also, though, if you guys could grant the manager the authority to add team members if necessary, that would be great. And that would just be in the case probably of if someone is sick or someone has an emergency and has to leave.
Okay.
Or...
So that would stay in the wording.
Yeah,
It's just the only thing that would be changed in this amendment is adding Mr. Hagerman's name the way I see
Yeah,
it.
so just adding Carl as a regular negotiating team member, but please leave the wording in about Steve being able to add members if necessary.
Yes, ma'am.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, does this give the union the ability to add an additional member, or?
No, so Manager Giesbrecht had sent some proposed ground rules to the union, and we just heard back today, this afternoon, shortly before the meeting. In those ground rules, Manager Giesbrecht had requested there be 3 negotiating team members on each side. In the past, it has been multiple team members on the union side and just a few on the borough side, and he thought it would be great if it could be an equal number. The union is not willing to do that. They flat out say no. They will have their 5 negotiating team members and as many of the APA representatives as they want to have come to town. So no, it's not going to change anything. Actually, it's just that Manager Giesbrecht was trying to get, wanted you guys to appoint the negotiating team members, know who they were going to be, and we were attempting to get the union to agree to have less people sitting at the table itself, but they will not.
Okay. If there's no other discussion on the amendment to add Mr. Hagerman's name to the negotiating team, will the clerk call the roll?
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the amendment passes, and now it's on to the main request to name the spokesperson negotiating team. If there's no changes, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward and see how the negotiations go. Next item on the agenda, letter to the Department of Transportation regarding the Cake Access Project. At the request of a few assembly members, Manager Giesbrecht drafted this letter requesting ADOT conduct a public meeting in Petersburg to update the community and the assembly on the status of the Petersburg/Cake Road, named the Cake Access Project by ADOT. I'd entertain a motion to approve sending this letter.
So,
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Marol. Any discussion? Member Mucci?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this letter is, this is great, but it's just, for me, it's just one of the things that I'm trying to sort out what the road is all about that is coming from Cake to 12 Mile Creek over on Kupernoff. A week or so ago, I was able to talk to Lance Merrick and Greg Lockwood and one other gentleman from the Public Information Office over there at DOT, and, they're not into the politics of building this road. They are into building this road. They told me that if they could build this road this spring, they would make it happen. But they don't have all the details sorted out, so it's probably going to be this summer. We've all heard, we've heard comments about search and rescue and ambulance service here, there, and ever back and forth. But, for me, as important as the ferry service is to me, it seems like $30 million.
Excuse me, Member Mucci, but I think we're just discussing sending this letter.
Sure.
We're not discussing whether we want to change funding at this time or anything. I don't think so. If
I have some comments.
we'll wait till Member Mucci's done. And then we'll recognize.
I'll stand down just for a second.
Member Tremblay.
Yeah, just that some people in the group today, there's 13 communities that are here. We're alternating between Ferry Caucus and Coastal Caucus up here. Some people were pretty surprised that this was in the draft AMHS report that was just released from the latest report instead of all the other reports. and that this is a topic being considered. So I'm excited to send this letter, and I'm hoping that they're able to respond with some urgency. I'm hoping to make it to Stedman's office between meetings tomorrow to try to learn some information from them regarding, because I'm also interested in just the history of this project. It's kind of just loomed, and now here we are, and it seems to somehow be urgent now, even though there hasn't been a public meeting on it in many years at this point. So I'm anxious to get this letter sent, and hopefully we'll get some good conversation going, and as well as community feedback.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Member Mucci, do you want to
Go ahead if you still want the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This, I know the topic is about sending this letter, but, there's more to just sending this letter. I mean, we're looking at, projects that we can't even afford to do on Metcalf Island. I mean, we're looking at, there's a Sitka pool that, we spent $26 million to build, and we don't have money to operate it. I mean, I'm just trying to sort out, I can't get any honest answers to why this road is going in. And I'm not sure if Mr. Lockwood is the person, or Mr. Merrig is the person, or the DOT commissioner is the person, but, I'm just trying, I just want to know what the urgency of this road project is. When we have other projects within, the borough, whether it's the ferry system, and it's hard for me to get an answer from either DOT or Senator Stedman's office about what the importance on this small portion of road is that's going to cost $30 to $40 million. So I'm hoping Mr. Lockwood or Mr. Merrig might come here next couple of weeks to kind of answer some of our questions.
Member Stan Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, short answer is they'll definitely be voting yes to write this letter, to send this letter. I would hope DOT could come clarify a few things. One, if you go to the Department of Transportation website, the stated purpose of this road is to increase subsistence and recreational opportunities for the residents of Petersburg and Cake. I have concerns about safety, meaning search and rescue, road maintenance, who those liabilities will fall on. I'm hoping they can answer some of those. Beyond that, the stated purpose of subsistence and recreation, there's quotes in the newspaper about people, or about wanting to use that as a corridor for electricity, and potentially other activities, and that kind of flies in the face of the Department of Transportation's stated goals, and I would love to speak with them about it, to maybe clarify some of these vagaries, both in terms of project scope and maintenance and liabilities. Thanks.
Any other comments on the letter? Okay, well, maybe if we send a letter, they'll come in and talk to us. We'll see what the odds of that are. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have the clerk send off the letter tomorrow, hopefully. Next item on the agenda is travel to Washington, D.C., and I'm requesting the Assembly approve travel to Washington, D.C. to visit with our federal delegation and emphasize Petersburg Borough's federal priorities. Our D.C. lobbyists recommend February 25th to the 26th, 2020 for the visit. There are available funds in the 2020 Assembly travel budget for this trip. So I'd to get it on the table, I'd entertain a motion to approve the trip.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Burrell. And since I'm asking for it, the manager and I, mostly him, have been having discussions with our lobbyist, Brad Gilman, in D.C. It's been, I believe, 3 years since we've been back. Later in the agenda, we're going to send a letter to them and our federal delegation from the Member Lynn drafted, thanking them for Secure Rural Schools for 2 more years and for PILT funding this year. I think it'd be important to lobby for those and try to get a longer-term resolution on those. And also, I think another important discussion topic would be the whale critical habitat area, since that's just popped up, and to see if they could get that movement stopped. Dredging is another issue we could talk to them about, and I'm just going on the recommendation basically of the lobbyists, thinking it's time to come back and visit our delegation in person. So, Member Lynn, and then Member Stanton-Grader.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think your trip back there the last time, talking about Coast Guard and keeping a cutter here, et cetera, was valuable. But having some experience there, I'd like to talk about, we're in election year. And that election year end, we're in an impeachment proceedings. There's nothing absolutely going to happen this year in Washington, D.C. It's going to be status quo.
Yeah.
By next year, we could have a whole set of new emphasis. I mean, just turned upside down. And so I guess where I'm at is that we would be, and the PILT funding has been approved for 2 years, and so has the SRS. The only thing that hasn't been done yet is the Parity Act. So I don't see a need this year to go. I very definitely see a need next year to go, because we need to get a pulse on what the changes are going to be, and they are going to be a whole bunch. And so I would like to see us hold off till next year and spend the money to do that, to do just what the mayor is suggesting, and use the money this year and to use for both people to go to a Southeast Conference and to participate in the discussions on the ferry system, from my perspective.
Any other
I would
discussion?
like to concur with Assemblymember Lynn. Just being here and being, first day of session, right? There's a lot of stuff moving around, and realizing just how effective bodies in the room can be right now in Juneau, and this is really the year that they can, basically if they don't figure out sustainable budget solutions, they're going to completely drain the savings account. Like, this is the year things are going to be happening in Juneau, and I was actually going to ask if we had a sense of, because right now there's no point in going to D.C. this week. I feel bad if anyone had scheduled a trip, because the senators are there locked in that room, right? So I concur with Assemblymember Lynn that focusing on Juneau right now, when things are so dire and so much is on the line, and then waiting until the dust of an election settles and see what comes next year, that would be my vote as well.
Any other discussion on the D.C. trip? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Brandy?
No.
Jay?
Nope.
Okay, we will be seeing if it's approved next year for the D.C. trip, and we'll inform our lobbyists that we will not be coming back. The next item on the agenda is Assemblymember Lynn drafted a letter thanking Senators Murkowski and Sullivan and Congressman Young for their support on secure rural schools and PILT funding. I'd entertain a motion to approve sending this letter.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The only thing I'd add, it's essentially for the public, it's a thank you letter to our delegation, because they supported the continuation of what the secure rural schools funding and the PILT funding. Most of that money goes to support our school here. About 80-90% of it actually goes to support our school. So it's a thank you letter for that. There's one other part to it, is that there has been a legislation drafted called the Parity Act, and what happens right now under PILT funding is that the funding is swayed towards the larger communities. There's more funds given there than there are to those municipalities 5,000 or less. And what that Parity Act does is bring that in so that both sides of that, the 5,000 above and the 5,000 below, would get the same type of recognition on the funding. And so that's the second part of the letter that was drafted.
Okay, yeah, and I'd have to thank NACO for being very involved, and that they're the ones that got that pushed through. And Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are smaller communities weighted higher than the larger communities?
No, they're weighted less. So there's more funding per capita on the larger communities than there is right now on the smaller ones. It would bring us up, essentially, is what it would do.
It'd be around $80,000 a year if the formula they're pushing for goes through more for us.
Good point.
So 83 or something along those lines. Any other discussion on the thank you letter? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you, Bob, for drafting that. Next item is communications. And maybe I'm going to ask the clerk to read this letter that came from T. Balboni.
Dear Borough Assembly, heard about your burning notice on KFSK. As an asthmatic, there are days I can barely walk through certain neighborhoods as someone is burning their plastic, rubber, aerosol cans, wrapping paper, oil jugs. You get the picture. I hear so much about saving whales and old-growth forests, so when I heard about the burn permit info on today's PSA, I must ask you to please consider your fellow citizens who are asthmatics. I ask you to think about ways we can do better for all residents. Separate and keep backyard burn bans, I think it says. Education, education, education. It begins with the kids. Hopefully they can help us teach all concerned that burning plastic sucks. No pun intended. We need to do better in our own kitchen and backyards. Have a dump that takes trash and buries it. Thank you, Teresa Balboni.
Okay, thank you for reading that, Clerk Thompson. And thank you for sending the letter. Get back to the agenda. Assembly discussion items. Board of Equalization training. The state assessor will be traveling in mid-March and can stop in Petersburg to provide Board of Equalization training and review the property assessment audit he is currently conducting for Petersburg. Finance Director Tao would like to schedule an assembly work session for the training and review. So I would entertain a motion. I guess this is just a discussion item. So is there any particular dates, Jody, just mid?
He said he was going to be in Ketchikan the March 16th, 17th, and 18th, so perhaps he could tack it onto that, maybe the 18th, 19th. I guess the first question is, does the Assembly want Board of Equalization training? And then, and then if so, he was just going to tack reviewing the audit onto that. He can also do that over the phone as well. It's nice to do it in person and to have a work session and whatnot, but it's up to the Assembly.
Okay, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So would this just be the training, or would this be the actual, if people had issues with?
No, this would just be training.
Training. Mm-hmm. And so is the training like a PowerPoint thing that we would need to have somebody here?
Yeah, the state assessor a few years ago, it's a different person now. I can't remember if he had a PowerPoint slides printed out, I believe.
Yep.
And he goes through it. It's Randy did it. I don't know your thoughts on it, but I always think it's a nice refresher.
I thought it was useful information, but I don't feel like I need to go through it again, but I would probably do it as a refresher. But for those that haven't done it, I think it's useful.
The Assembly sits as the Board of Equalization, I believe, the first meeting of April. Mm-hmm. So it would be, right before that, which would be kind of nice.
Member Stanton Gregor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's been several years since I've done it now, but I very clearly remember feeling very important to me as a new Assembly person, and being that we've got a new Assembly person on board right now, I think it'd be valuable for them and anybody else who wants a refresher for sure, because the Board of Equalization is a pretty challenging task as part of our rules up here, so being well-trained is important.
And just a note.
The 18th and 19th works for me.
Okay, so I could just try to get him to, if there's enough of a consensus to schedule something, and I'll just send out an email, and see.
We have a meeting on the 16th, the second meeting of the 16th, and
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
that will probably be the week I will be departing for herring fishing, but it would be maybe later in the week, mid to 18th, 19th, so I've sat through it a couple times. It is interesting to know the do's and don'ts.
Thank you.
So you will try to schedule something? Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion items. There was a discussion item added by Member Lynn, I believe, to talk about the manager's goals and whether we need a work session. Is that what?
Yeah, just, again, partly for the public, we gave the manager, I think, 8 or 9 different objectives to accomplish this year. He's now come back to us with at least 4 of them with partial answers, but in at least 2 of them that I remember, he has questions for us that we really need to respond back to him on. But it needs to be done, in my opinion, as a full assembly in a discussion format. One of them had to do with, there was a list of priorities that we would like to see for economic development. His question to us is, where are we at? Which ones would we pick, or would we pick any of them? And I think there needs to be some discussion. And for his purposes, for him to fulfill what we ask him to do, I think we need to give him some feedback. And so what I was suggesting, that we have some kind of a work session to do that.
Okay, Member Stanton Gregor?
Thanks. To clarify, Member Lynn, to help me think about this. As I most clearly recall what you're talking about, him wanting some actionable direction with that. If we follow that logic, though, perhaps we should put it on as a focal point of an agenda so we can actually give votable action as opposed to a work session. We don't have, doesn't have the binding, it's more of a loose discussion. We can have the same discussion with a vote at the end if we did it during an open session. Food for thought. That way he's got clear marching orders as we come out of an assembly meeting as opposed to a work session. Someone could come back later and be like, I don't like this anymore, when it came time to vote on it. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So do we want to have a discussion item regarding this work session on the first meeting in February and an action item on the second meeting in February? Or do you think we have enough information to just have as an action item on that first meeting in February?
I think there were 2 of the goals that I remember. Each of those, I think you could have an action item on. The rest of them, I don't think you're to that point, but
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci?
Thank you. Maybe we can just kind of go through those goals and objectives over the next week and kind of see what needs to happen right away, and we could have them on the agenda for that first meeting in February, and just kind of start grinding on them. Just kind of.
And I would be okay with that. I just think there needs to be follow-up.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
To either give him firm direction or just quit pursuing it?
Yes.
So that will be, as a discussion item with him at the next meeting, or do you want to just, did we have an action item?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I would suggest that Bob and I kind of sit down and go over those goals and objectives and see what we want to talk about at that next meeting and throw them on the agenda for that meeting. It might be all of them, or it might be just a few of them, but at least we can kind of head forward with them as action items at that first meeting in February.
Member Stanton Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just my 2 cents, whatever it's worth on that, I would go for less more than more so we can give proper attention to it one at a time. Even if we put one on the first meeting in February, another one second meeting in February, just so we can give each one its proper attention. Because that obviously won't be the only thing on the meeting agenda. We want to do our due diligence is all I'm saying. Food for thought.
If it gets too overwhelming, we might realize we have to have a special meeting to address it.
Exactly.
It's something where we can take action. Are you going to include discussions with the manager?
Absolutely.
You have the 2 of you and with Steve to
Yes.
And come up with an action item.
firm up his ideas up to date? All right.
And so to finish that up, Jeff and I will sit down with the manager and then at least have one item on the agenda for action item for the next coming meeting.
That'd be
Is
great.
that?
I'd be good with that.
So with your discussions with the manager, you will prioritize what is the most pertinent?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think we added any other discussion items. Board of Equalization. The next item is discussion of subjects not on the agenda, and I think from the way the agenda was handled today with making motions to add things on the agenda, I think we probably have the gist of that. I just brought this up again because listening to the last meeting, parts of it, that under recognitions, we decided we'd draft this letter and send it to DOT. And I think it's important that we don't discuss things at a meeting and especially potentially take action on them unless it's on the agenda, either added to the agenda at the proper time early in the meeting, and we can't do that, I don't feel, and I've talked to the clerk about this, and I think she feels the same way, an action item, because you're not noticing it to the public 72 hours prior to the meeting, so that's just wanted to bring that up. Member Stan Gregor?
This is a point of clarification. The manager just shared during that moment that he was preparing a letter to send to DOT in response to Member Mucci. Member Mucci wasn't asking the manager to do that as an action item at that point, just as a point of clarification.
So is there any other input on this discussion item? I think that is...
Actually, yeah. It's interesting this is on the agenda just because I had a meeting with some other community members last week, and we were talking about the assembly and how, what's the right word? I think uncomfortable members of the public feel oftentimes coming to talk to us at the assembly level. And just, it's very formal. People aren't used to testifying. And it can be rather discouraging to hear nothing, say 10 people come up to talk about something that's not on the agenda, and then they hear us continue to not talk about it for that entire meeting, which I understand when it comes to action items and stuff like that, but I think letting some room for overall discussion, like this is one of the only public forums we have to talk about things as a community, and definitely the only place to talk about it as an assembly. So when it comes to discussion items or, if stuff slips in, it's really just a way of letting people think about something for a longer time, and maybe providing some opportunity for input. So that's just my 2 cents. I know with the need for public disclosure with action items and stuff like that, that's super important to have that published in advance, but I understand how it can happen when we get to talking about things, and if anything, it's almost better that it comes up in a public meeting that we then decide to put on the next agenda to actually make an action on, because it's either that or somebody themselves just brings forth an email and sends to Debbie, and then it seems to come out of the blue compared to what we're doing right now, which is talking about an issue. So I understand not wanting to make action items, that's definitely not allowed, but just leaving some flexibility, at least in that regard.
Okay, my feeling on the matter is that if you're going to talk about something in a public meeting, it needs to be added to the agenda, but that's just my 2 cents. That way, people have the time, even if they're listening at home, if they want to come down and get in on the conversation, or I guess this is just discussion of the assembly, but anyway, I see where you're coming from, Member Tremblay, so thank you. Any other discussion on that topic? Okay, that brings us to recognitions. Are there any recognitions by staff or the assembly? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the staff at Long-Term Care for piling people into the van and taking them to basketball games. Crappy weather. Dennis Sperl is there. There's a bunch of people that have long-term commitments to the community, and it's just great to see them on the floor. They're enjoying it. It's a big thing for staff to do, loading them in their wheelchairs into the van, from the van into the gym, and it's just really cool to see them there. And I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really appreciate the long-term care folks.
Okay, any other recognitions? Staff have any recognitions?
I'd like to do recognition.
Okay.
Unless I'm cutting somebody.
You have a recognition, Member Tremblay?
I do. I'd like to recognize the Petersburg Share Coalition. Becky Turland sent an email out regarding the point in time count that's coming up, and I just wanted to highlight that. It's a count that the state of Alaska / the country does one night a year, and that's to measure homelessness in Alaska. And so it helps us advocate for federal and state funding to assist our homeless population. And that's anyone without any form of shelter or couch surfing, living in their car, or even struggling with maintaining current housing month to month. That's something that's really quite critical, especially in wintertime. It's been super dire for people. So the resources coming up on the 29th of January include haircut and shower vouchers, lab work and other medical resources, clothing and winter gear, assistance applying for Medicaid and Section 8, community resource list, hygiene products, food, and more. And so the Share Coalition, everyone involved, most of them volunteers for their time. That's happening the 29th from 3 to 6 p.m. at the John Hanson Senior Community Hall. And so Becky Turland, 3332 as the contact person, is still looking for volunteers. And I know once I get a handle on my schedule, I'm hoping to try to reach out. So I just wanted to really highlight folks are doing really, really important work, and we're very grateful for them for what they do for the members of our community who need it the most.
Okay, thank you for the recognition. Are there any other recognitions? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.